and welcome to this episode of Rule of Carnage, which is a series of conversations, videos, sometimes podcasts between myself, Glenn Ford, a games designer and developer, and Mike Hutchinson, a games designer and developer. One of the games that Mike has designed is A Billion Suns, and one of the games that I've helped develop is A Billion Suns. And we're in the middle of what you might call some game development of A Billion Suns right about now, because Mike is very much in the middle of writing the second edition of A Billion Suns for Osprey Games. And what's been happening the last couple of conversations, specifically the last conversation, is that Mike is letting us into a super early work in progressy draft of that second edition. I'm reacting in real time to the things I'm seeing, and hopefully people are seeing behind the scenes of how this process works. So we finished running through, I think, round structure in the last conversation. Mike, what's the next chapter heading coming up?
Yeah, so I think in this deep dive into the second edition of Billion Suns core rules, we're going to keep looking at the core rules and probably looking at activations and stuff. So this second edition, some of the focuses are about making it much easier to get into, but also to sort of try and streamline the game to keep the things that are cool and unique about A Billion Suns, but take a lot of the brain ache out of it. And so that's a lot of the focus on the core rules, because the core rules are going to be what you're always playing with. And then there are some game modes that give you a toolkit of different kinds of cool spaceship experiences. So with the round structure we just looked at, there's a command phase which no longer has like a pre-setting of commands. It just has, you get some command tokens and roll for initiative. Tactical phase where all the juice happens. Damage control phase where you resolve damage tokens. So it's like a doom phase in Hobgoblin, and then an end phase for cleanup. So I want to jump to activation, but it's worth just looking quickly at the jump in stuff. There's not a ton of changes in jump in, actually. So jump points and jumping in ships were this is mostly as first edition. The design decision that I'm scribbling around here is that there was in first edition the ability to move a jump point, to redeploy a jump point from one place to another. And because of the way that I've changed the tactical phase, this becomes a problem. And so I think I'm going to cut the ability for you to move a jump point. So you basically have a fixed number of jump points for the game. Every time you deploy a jump point, that's a completely permanent decision in the game.
Because there's no longer a resource that you spend for fiddling with jump points, and therefore you can just jump them infinitely back and forth.
Yeah, it becomes a stalling vector for messing up the turn structure. And moving jump points around didn't happen that often. It was kind of a niche strategic choice, and there's a few places in this redesign where I'm like, well, if that's a niche strategic choice, does it really need to be there? Like, it's several paragraphs or a paragraph that could just go, particularly if it's causing problems in some core bit. Jumping in units is basically the same, but it's kind of in flux because it depends a little bit on how the game modes work out. But yeah, select a single unit from your fleet roster, which might be the fixed list of things you're deploying in Warzone, or a sort of available larger pool of ships in Corp Space.
I love I've already forgotten why I added this comment. That's such a Mike comment.
Yeah, no, this is I was playtesting whilst I was on holiday at the beach, and this was like a solution to, I was munging through some particular problem with the turn structure, and obviously at one point this was something that I thought was a good idea, and then I encountered it a week later and I was like, what the heck? What? Like garbage rule. Anyway, so that'll probably go. Okay, so let's get to the juice here, which is the activation phase. There's quite a lot of changes in the activation phase. Really quite a lot of changes here. So the first thing is, we touched on it last episode, but dragging to select a battle group. So we've got ships, which are our miniatures. They're grouped into units, which is One ship per unit for a really big one, 3 for the medium size, and 5 if you're little squadrons. But then you've got this ability to say, well, when it's my turn to activate something, I'm going to select a friendly unactivated unit, and then I'm going to select any number of friendly unactivated units, at least partially within 6 inches of that lead unit to.
I was about to say that.
But critically, the combined mass of the selected ships must be 10 or less. So you've got basically this sort of built-in pactivation mechanic where if things are clumped together, they can perform a sort of aggressive combined activation. And the advantages of that are that you get a lot of focused force. The disadvantage of that is that you lose some activation control. And so that balance between like focusing force and losing activation control is like one of the funnest design challenges in this like activation system right now. And I think the way that the game is currently working, it feels like it's quite close to working nicely. But that's something that like in terms of a development objective, like making sure that that balance is fun and cool is definitely a focus for the play testing.
Okay. So you're limited by the combined mass of the ships, not the combined mass of the units.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so a unit of 3 corvettes, which amass 2 ships, that's a 6.
Right. Okay. Yeah. 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 Okay. Because yeah, it's just again, this is a thing where it's the units, ships, and battle groups are all getting used in this little bit, and
Yeah, this is one of those places where so this application that we're using here is Notion, and Notion has an absolutely killer feature, which is that you can take you can take blocks of text and you can create synced objects out of them. So in this case, it would be great if in this activation section here, it had the rule for combined mass. So now we've got the drag to select, and this like combined mass of the selected ships is a really important concept. So we can pop
mm-hmm.
the combined mass rule next to it. And what's great is that now if I change this here, it'll get changed in all the other places. So that's the like worst thing when you're working on a rule book is if you've got like this happened all the way through the Hobgoblin rule book where like keyword rules would end up in multiple places and get out of sync. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Okay.
And then when you activate a battle group, you activate all the units in that battle group, completing each step with all units before starting the next step. So first we move all of the units in the battle group, 1 unit at a time in any order. Then we get shot with passive attacks. And then we have this is a simplification from first edition. We have an action step. So we choose one action for each unit in the battle group. And you can choose different actions for each unit. And each ship in the each ship in the unit takes that action. And the actions are down here. We'll skip straight to them because they're the most interesting thing in this. Because this is where
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the complexity of the steps in activation for first edition gets boiled down. So after moving and potentially suffering passive attacks, you take an action. That can be move some more without pivoting,
Okay. Right. Right. Yeah.
do an attack, jump hop, scramble squadrons, or scan a thing.
Cool. Yeah.
And
So
sorry, go ahead.
because before it was you choose a thing which would be move twice, move and shoot, blah blah blah.
Yeah, there's no orders anymore.
Now it's you move, then you take an action. One of those actions will essentially be the move twice order. So it's yeah.
Yes, and then what is really important to know, jumping ahead from these to these commands, is that there is a command called all hands, which says after a friendly unit takes its first action, spend a command token to take a second different action. So that is very, very important as part of the thing here.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just pop that there so we can remember about it. So you can if you bother to spend your fungible resources, you can take two actions, but you're mostly going to be taking one. So it's double move or it's move attack. So this ends up feeling a bit like a two action point skirmish system.
Hmm. My assumption is that it will be moving, scanning, moving will be one of the big things to do with those command tokens, because it was always like scanning at the end of your turn, which was the thing that like significantly slowed down a plan that you were enacting. And so the fact that you'll be able to now scan and then move off again, or even scan and then jump hop or something like that, I think that'll open a lot of windows. And
Yeah, and so in my playing like of the more straight up combats simulator, like the ability to double move and then shoot is really like an often a powerful use of a token, or the
Mhm.
ability to like jump hop and then shoot is really good. So you move towards a jump point, hop over, and then like attack someone that you've just sprung out. And so that's like a, that's a thing that was really fun in A Billion Suns, was spotting the like teleport attack route. And so making jump hop an action and attacking an action, and then forcing you to spend a command token to do both of those and therefore do the cool thing. Like this is the way that like you've got this little row of command tokens and they basically become a cool special moves bar.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The thing of like spotting an opportunity on a different table and hopping across and doing things. And yeah, because it used to be basically you had to sort of commit to that jump hop option quite early on, like in a turn or in a set of things. It had to be the first thing you had to do is you had to jump
Yeah, it was
across.
the first thing you did before moving.
Yeah, so now being able to like move and then hop and then do something
And
else.
then potentially move again to go and like contest an objective or attack again to do a surprise attack. Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna open
So
up.
yeah, so this action step, I'm really pleased with it, and it's very readable, and it is like it's a really chunky design hook because it's really easy to build on top of this thing. So like it's easy to imagine that like an upgrade gives you access to a new action, or a faction has a special action, or then a faction can take one of actions for free or something.
Yeah. It's sort of it's boxing out the design space in a more interesting way.
Yeah. The other thing that's worth noting here is that in the movement of units, I've just changed it. So it used to be that you pivot and then thrust. Now you move up to your thrust value in inches and you pivot every mass number of inches. And
Okay.
it's a little bit more fiddly, but it's a lot more spaceship feelingy. And so you end up like having to do a little chick, 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 chick thing to move around. It's still quite free and easy, but it does mean that like slow ships feel more lumbering. So I don't know, like I'm not desperately like attached to this change, but it just feels like it was a very, very abstracted movement system. And this is just a little bit more like, boop, boop,
Mm.
boats in space.
Well, it's interesting because like the slightly I don't know grognardy pushback that some had to first edition was, well, it's not a spaceship game because it doesn't have movement inertia. So, and this is
And it
like a
doesn't
little
have
drop.
like vector movement where you can pivot one way and move in the other.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of like giving weight to things, which is interesting.
Yeah, there's a few things in regard to that like another piece of feedback that I've gotten here and there is like there's no broadside weapons or rear facing weapons in this.
Mm.
And that's because like ultimately I need their like it's a game with lots of shooting. I need the relational like I need the relationships between models to be super interesting, otherwise shooting is tedious. And
Mm.
having a tight forward facing primary arc and having donuts, like those are the things that make this game fun, even though there's lots of long range shooting. And
Mm.
so being able to futz with that is not okay because it just makes the game less fun. But anyway,
Mhm.
so here in the movement step, there's a little bit of a difference. There is a command point to increase your thrust value by 5 minus mass, which is really clumsy, but that's what it is right now. So if you're a mass 3 ship, you can spend a command point for a 2-inch bonus, and
Um,
then you can vector.
on high G maneuver, um, if its pivot is more than 90 degrees, it loses its action for this activation, just in relation to the fact that you can spend command tokens to get extra activations. If the intention is I might make that it loses an action.
No, no, it loses its action because all hands says after a unit takes its first action, it can take a second different action. So you can't take the first action if you've lost your action.
So does that mean that I have to? So you can't spend all hands on a thing that has pivoted more than 90 degrees because
Correct.
haven't. Oh, okay, so if that's the intention, sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's the intention.
I
Yeah,
might.
I could add that sort of clarification, but yeah, that's the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
intention.
Yeah, I would somewhere drop in, maybe in that italicized text there, that yes, this does stop you from using all hands to do a more than
Yeah,
three.
because all hands is actually really central to the system now. It's worth just making that completely clear.
Yeah, yeah, because it's not immediately obvious that
Yeah,
losing its action means, well, I can't buy a new action for it. That's the thing that I
yeah,
think people would very quickly be like, need a FAQ on.
yeah. Yeah, so like this high G maneuver, it doesn't like it matters not at all for mass zero ships. Like it's just completely ignored by that. But it really affects mass three ships, for example, because mass three ships tend to have a movement of 3 inches. So they have to move 3 inches and then they can only turn up to 90 degrees if they want to do anything.
Hmm.
Um, or they have to then um spend to yeah, no, that's all they can do. So you can't do a J turn with a battleship, but you
Hmm.
can with a you can even with like a gunship, like a mass one gunship. You can move an inch, pivot 90, move an inch, pivot 90. Like that's fine. You can turn pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah, and I think these are interesting emergent rules for creating that sense of inertia that you possibly want. So I think I think these are
Yeah,
cool and
and the reason it's 90 is because every degree other than 90 is a total ball ache. Like 180 and 90 are fine, but like I
mm.
want it to be 45, but measuring 45, like humans just can't see 45 degrees.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. Right angles or full turns are a lot sharper. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So if this was a video game, I'd probably change this rule to 45 degrees, but it ain't. So
yeah. Hmm.
um passive passive attacks hasn't changed. The emergent change to passive attacks is that because everything's always like combined activating thanks to drag to select, you have to pick who you're going to attack. So by moving everybody and then the other guy gets to do their passive attacks, you're like pushing the question onto them of like, where are you throwing your passive attacks? And Mother's Wing becomes super important. Mother's Wing is actually like it's kind of promoted to a like strategically critical rule in this particular draft, because whether or not your fighters have like shield value 6 or whatever like really matters.
Yeah, yeah. I always liked it as a rule. I think it was one of the more billion sunsy strong rules.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's all of that. When we get to combat, there's really very little changed here. Um, so ranges and attack dice and damage all work as they did in first edition, where attack dice have set damage numbers and the silhouette is the thing that you have to roll under, equal or under. There's a bit of finessing of the rule around selecting targets, which this is going to take a little bit more editing, but it's basically just like, you select one primary target and a number of auxiliary targets, and I'm futzing around with like, did ships choose targets individually or do the units all have to pick the same target? Right now, ships pick their targets
It,
individually.
it must be true that the target unit has a silhouette. Are there units that don't have silhouettes?
It used to say the target unit or object, um, because sometimes you can want to shoot a planet or something and it doesn't have a silhouette.
Okay.
This might be able, yeah, this might be able to be cut. This was a piece of potential cruft from the fact that objects and units were different things. Objects and ships were different things.
Mm. Okay.
Because, like, for example, you can't shoot jump points or comsats because they don't have a silhouette,
Yeah,
but
but
you
they're
can shoot a facility because it does.
right. But they're but none of them are units, so you now can't shoot any of them, right?
Uh, Interstellar objects is treated as being a unit in themselves. Is how I fixed it, but it's
Okay.
like super buried and irritating, and like
Yeah, and it says there if an object has a silhouette, then it's a valid target.
yeah.
Okay.
So like logically, it's all there. It's not very beautiful yet.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, selecting targets is one of those things where it's like I know what I mean, but
Mm.
it's really annoying to write it, and
Yeah.
then I want to make it so it's less annoying to read.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's the eternal battle, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Um, and then resolving attacks, not any difference here really. Again, like this is a very specific like editing thing, but like figuring out exactly how to word it so that you resolve the attacks in a way that's useful for the gameplay but doesn't allow you to like it matters whether you resolve attacks as individual attacks or all grouped together, because when you spend command tokens to do things like power to weapons and power to shields, it matters whether I shot the planet smasher and then I shot the laser cannon, or whether I shot the planet smasher and the laser cannon all together.
Hmm.
There's a bit of futzing around the words there, but it's not super interesting. Critical hits still do the same, so ones do an extra dice, and power to weapons. I went backwards and forwards, but it's back to first edition where you can spend command tokens and it will increase the chance of critical hits because that was always fun.
Hmm. And it's simple to understand.
Yeah, and the relationship between the re-rolling the attack dice and the power to weapons, I have found really interesting because like if you've got like 1d12, the chance like spending a command token to increase your chance to hit from like an 8 to a 9
Mm.
versus like rolling a 9 and then just re-rolling it with a command token, like there's a tasty little, sometimes it feels
Mm.
like, oh, I could have gone either way and maybe I picked the wrong one this time. So I kept both of these in even though they kind of have a relationship together, and also because executive override is that like it's that fun little trap where it's like I can always make the game do what I want, but at quite a cost. And so I can sort of I can use this I can use this in anger and then regret it, which is kind of fun.
Well, yeah, because power to weapons is before rolling, and it's had as many as command dice as you want, and it's every dice in the shot. Whereas executive override is after rolling, and it's one command dice each time. So it's like a single big dice. You want executive override, multiple small dice. You want power to weapons, and yeah. So
Yeah, mostly.
they have
Mostly,
different.
except that like if you're shooting like a heavy cruiser which has got a silhouette of 8, which means it has 8 hit points. If you've got a single D12, if you did power to weapons a couple times, therefore you've got a much more increased chance of a critical hit. Like that's the difference between taking it out in a single shot and not. So then you're like, oh well, how many of these tokens do I want to spend?
It's choice with texture to it. So it's a
Exactly. Because like part of writing the commands was like, ooh, I want to strip them down and make it like a very small list of commands so you can remember them all. But this is the sort of thing where it's like actually this makes the combat system much more delightful to play around with because I've got this fungible resource and I can make better or worse decisions, and then the dice can screw me.
and also it's spending to make you better at hitting before you hit, and spending after to let you re-roll feels like the natural
Mm.
vocabulary of minis games. This is
Mhm.
not. It's not something that you're spending cognitive budget on because everyone's like, of course, that's what I can use my fungible tokens for. It would be weird if that weren't the two of the options I
Yeah,
could spend them on.
exactly. And so the same here for saving throws, which is in fact, I haven't got the command copied across here, but yeah, power to shields, power to shields. So it's very much the same. You can spend mass number of command tokens to add +1 to the shield's value,
Hmm.
which is exactly what it did in first edition. But then also, where are we? Roll saving throws. But also Mother's Wing matters a lot. So
Hmm.
Mother's Wing, the change I've made here is that Mother's Wing is now double your mass.
Right.
And that makes it more powerful, but it's purely a practical thing, which is like it was always really annoying to use Mother's Wing because like even if you're using quite small based spaceships, you had to pile them up in a really irritating way. And like I haven't put it in the design document, but it was in an earlier design document that like my base measurement has doubled from 3 inches to 6 inches across the game pretty much. So there was a bunch of things that happened within 3 inches, and I'm just like, oh, 3 inches is such a small and irritating amount, particularly with these spaceships.
Well, it was a tricky thing because A Billion Suns cares about the center point of the miniature, the flight
The
stand.
flight peg, yeah.
And so like small measurements always made you feel like I would be advantaged by playing this game with just a set of pins because then I could chunk them together as much as I want, and these
Right.
miniatures are just making my life an absolute pain.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly. So yeah, there's a bunch of decisions in this which are about increasing the ranges, particularly 6 inches. So like I'm playing with a 6 inch measuring stick, and that's proving very useful because jump points and well, yeah, I should say like jump ranges has gone. Like it's just always 6 inches from a jump point.
okay.
Yeah, and then the damage, obviously the major change here is that you stack damage tokens, but you don't immediately resolve them because we're going to wait for the damage control phase to resolve them.
Hmm.
More detail on Mother's Wing. Yeah. And then
Okay.
damage, there's nothing we haven't already said here. This is exactly the same rules from
Mm.
before. And then to look at the commands, we touched on most of them. So you're going to get like 5, 6, 7 command tokens around, and you're going to pick between increasing your thrust value, getting your bonuses to attacks. Red alert, which is once during your activation, spend a command token to discard D3 damage tokens from that unit. This suddenly becomes way more important now that we have a damage phase.
Hmm.
I'm not completely convinced about this one because there were some reasons why I stepped away from healing. But because you can only do it once and it's only D3, like it is of specific utility, but I'm intrigued about whether this one needs to be here.
Yeah, because I suppose the big thing is using it as a reaction to passive attacks, right? Because you move, you get passive attack shot, then you use red alert, so you don't you don't get removed that
Yeah,
activation.
and the sequencing matters here because the damage control phase comes before the end phase, and it would tend to be that you're checking like objective control stuff in the end phase. So
Hmm.
yeah, so I moved up to the comsat. You blasted me with my passive attacks. I'm going to lose a ship, which will
Hmm.
swing the balance of the objective control. Um, and so yeah, so at the end of my activation, I'd red alerts to discard some of those and still hold on. So I guess yeah, the
Mm.
other thing is like the timing of this, whether it's at the start of the activation or any point, matters quite a lot.
Yeah, because during an activation is an infinitely small section of the activation, isn't it? You can literally do it at any point. Um, and it's once for each unit, not once for each battle group, which is also sort of interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's fun, but I yeah I have some yellow flags around this.
Mm.
Needs to be certain. And then we got the executive override and the all hands, which we talked about. And then there's some shit down here that's like there's two elements here, ramming and boarding actions that I've written rules for, which I'm very unsure about. But
Mm.
I'm putting them in so that I can take them out again. So
Right.
potentially there's a ramming speed, one command token. During the movement of a friendly ship, select an object or an enemy ship whose position this movement crosses and target them with a ram attack. We'll get to the rules for that.
Hmm.
And then there was this power to inertial dampers, which is from first edition. which I left in because I wasn't sure whether I was going to enjoy this. I haven't missed this because of the relationship between all hands that we were discussing already. Like, like either this gets folded into all hands or it just gets dumped and all hands stays like it is. Like this doesn't need to exist. I'm just leaving it here because there was a get out for like, oh, I can J turn a battleship.
Yeah. All that's doing is making the question that I asked about all hands initially irrelevant, right?
Hmm.
Because it's
Yeah.
just all hands says, "Oh no, you can't do that second action," and then this one just says you can. In which case, we may as well just make all hands able to give you the second action anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the reason I'm leaving it here is because I want to be thinking about that question as I'm playtesting of like,
Mm.
I, I I would like to J turn this battleship in order to shoot you with my big cannon. Does that feel fair and fun, or just kind of gamey and gank?
Yeah. It's
Because if
just
it's only one command token to essentially eliminate inertia, what's the point in putting inertia in, really?
yeah, no, it's just a design choice that it's like it's the reason I asked it about all hands. It's like, well, what's the intent here? Is the intent that I can't use command token to overrule this, or I can? And if the intent is you can't, then you can't.
Hmm.
It doesn't. It's a choice. You just make the choice, don't you?
Yeah. And so a bit like the actions, the commands becomes command tokens and commands becomes like an easy, chunky design hook area for factions and upgrades and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
yeah, there's a few notes down here about
it
like,
particularly
okay,
feels like
can I like generating votes in Gaslands? Can like I do something flavorful for my faction to generate a command token? Can I, does my faction have access to a command option that you don't, which is a very like 40k thing. Like 40k defines its factions through access to unique commands.
absolutely. The the commands feel like an obvious faction differentiation option.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, the way that sub factions work in modern 40k, I think, is fairly influential on my thinking about how factions would probably work in A Billion Suns, which is there's a relatively like sub factions in 40k, like there's a set army list because it's the orc army list, and then sub factions say, oh, you get a different army wide special rule and you get access to a different set of commands that you can spend your command tokens on. And so I
Mm.
think that that might end up being a sort of a thing that I'm following as a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it for all the core rules. I won't I won't go into the ramming and boarding action. Well, let's go into the ramming and boarding action. It's a bit of fun. It won't take too long, but this I think is like very raw games design where it's just like I've had feedback on I've had feedback on the fact that these are missing. They are fun tropes from spaceship games and spaceship media, but I've never missed them. And so the
Mm.
question was, can I write something simple enough that works nicely? And then can I find out what the design reason for it existing is? And can I believe that reason?
Mm.
So ramming speed. So we said, yeah, if I move across the position of an enemy ship, then I can spend a command token to ram them. And I roll a dice,
Mm.
which is controlled by my mass. And if I hit, I cause damage ignoring shields, but I
Right.
also take damage back equal to twice the mass of the target ship, also ignoring my shields.
Right.
So like it's a way of ignoring shields. It's so yeah. So here there's notes here like what is the purpose of ramming? So maybe it provides an aggressive and flavorful tactic that some players will enjoy. It's okay. Provide a methods for big ships to sweep aside much smaller ships. That doesn't really work because of the way that movement is along a line. So you'd have to really line something up to actually do that.
Mm.
Provide a last ditch method for smaller ships to provide heroic suicide missions against larger ones. The A Wing that strikes the Star Destroyer's bridge, the Lightspeed Ram in the second Disney Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because so lightweight. I think the ignoring shields thing is tricky, and the question is because lightweight ships will be auto hitting bigger ships. Um, but they
except
don't.
on a 6. Yeah.
You, yeah. Apart from on a dud, you only cause one damage. Yeah, the question will be like the cost of scrambled ships, and if you're just scrambling ships that immediately fly into.
Yeah, you're just using them as torpedoes.
Yeah, just using them as bullets at that point. You're just firing the scramble squadrons directly into somebody and ignoring their shields. Is that
Right, and if a scrambled squadron costs you like 4 credits or something, like it's a very expensive bullet, but like in that moment where I've got nothing left to activate apart from this thing that like definitely can't get through your shields with its lasers, but it like you've got only 1 damage left on your battleship. Like, is this the cool moment that we talk about and therefore is worth half a page of rules because it creates that moment that we talk about for days afterwards? I
or
don't know.
or does it feel like a cheap shot that sort of
Mm.
the other guy like what do you mean you just ignore my shields? What do you mean you just dump this thing out and fire it into me and win the game because of it? Yeah, that's one of those ones that's the a mouthfeel thing, I think, possibly.
Yeah, super unsure about this one. And the other one that I'm super unsure about is boarding actions.
And also,
Uh,
sorry, just in reference
yeah.
to ramming, I think one of the things that's tricky about ramming is putting in a definitive suicide mission with no leadership, or order tests. I think is the thing that might feel weird to people, where you're just like, I dump out a squadron of 4 ships and tell them to all just die, and every single one of them goes, right, oh, boss.
Right, right, right. Yeah,
Some
yeah.
people will be like, surely there should be like a command test or something where those guys go, sorry, what will happen to us when we plow into the Star Destroyer? Oh, death, definitely death, no question. Yeah, not certain. I think that's the thing that people will feel makes it feel cheap or weird.
Yeah, I agree. That's a
Mm.
good textural question. Boarding actions. Uh, so if you've got a boarding teleporters upgrade, which isn't a thing, upgrades aren't even written yet, but like let's imagine
Mm-hmm.
that there's a thing called an upgrade and one of them's a teleporter. You're really close. You roll some boarding dice equal to your twice your mass or something, and then you do a funny little mini game where you pair off dice, and each time as the attacker, you win one of those pairs off. The target ship suffers a damage, ignoring ship shields. So again, it's ignoring shields. And then if the ship would be destroyed by the damage gained in a boarding action, it's not destroyed, but it's instead captured and is under the captured player's control for the rest of the game. And these rules apply, and you can detonate it. And like, I don't know, like it's so much like this is one of those things where it's like this is really fun and cool potentially, or it's just like the biggest vector for jank.
So it requires you to track damage caused by a boarding action separately from damage caused by anything else.
No, 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 because it's only the last damage. If the ship would be destroyed by the damage game. Oh yeah, but
But you have a damage step, so
now I've got a
there's
damage
the
step. This was
last.
written before the damage control.
Okay, because that becomes a pain in the hole depending on when boarding happens and shooting happens. And it also starts you questioning, like, oh, okay, well, just a minute. I've got 4 damage from shooting on you and 4 damage from boarding on you, and you have a silhouette of 3. So I'll apply the 2 from shooting you and then 1 from boarding you, which means you don't get destroyed. Although there are 2 points of damage from shooting left over, but I'm gonna, and it's all a bit like, ah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So again, like what's more interesting than the implementation is the intent. So the gameplay purposes of boarding actions are what? Provide a narratively fun way to capture a ship or its cargo or its personnel as opposed to just blowing everything up. And that like mostly is fun for the purpose of scenarios, forcing you to capture things without blowing them up. Um,
Hmm.
but there's probably other ways of doing that by saying like, you know, you've got to destroy this with auxiliary fire or something, and when you do, if you destroy something within 3 inches, you actually captured it instead of destroying it or something. Like there's a way of writing that specifically for the scenarios.
I mean, what I would say is like one of the things that most embitters players is when I beat you with your own stuff. Like
Hmm.
whenever there's a thing in something that lets me steal a thing off you and then hit you with it, and then I hit you with it, and that's the thing that wins for me. That absolutely drives people,
Yeah, definitely.
and
Yeah,
I
you can't actually do anything with it other than jump out or detonate, and it doesn't make any passive attacks. But
yeah, but it could be,
you could fly it as a bomb up to me and blow up my
but it could be
capital ship.
carrying like objectives, right? It can be
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
ship or something. So
yeah,
like
yeah.
running in and stealing your utility ship and then winning the game because I then jumped it out,
Yeah.
I think is the sort of thing that it's very borderline between being an epic story and just being incredibly embittering for somebody, you know?
Yeah, actually, one thing that might be true is like, is this a fringe rule?
Hmm.
Because like privateers and pirates capturing ships and driving off with the loot in a co-op solo scenario, like awesome. I definitely want to be able to board this ship. Like going around blowing up treasure ships is a terrible idea. I ought to be doing this. So it might be that this isn't a core rule. It's something that like exists in the fringe rule set. And like in the fringe rule set, we got like rules for loot and rules for boarding actions, and those only apply here because I don't want you to be doing boarding actions in Warzone.
Yeah, and it's like who cares how much you embitter and piss off the AI player, by
Exactly.
stealing his stuff? His feelings don't matter to me. So
Exactly. Whereas, like, yeah, driving up the Millennium Falcon to a giant like container ship filled with, rarium, mega ore, and then winning a boarding action, then driving it off to a jump point and jumping out with it, like jobs are good, and we told that story perfectly.
yeah, and at that point, I think, and this is something we'll get into when we get into the fringe rules. I'd want to play around more with: are you boarding it and taking over the ship and flying the ship away? Are you grabbing the thing that's on the ship and running away again? Is that
Mm.
depending on how big the ship is that you're going into? So you can go board a little like trader and completely take it over because it's got a crew of like two people. But if you're jumping into a star destroyer, what you need to do is like put on some uniforms, run around, grab the thing you want, and then get off again. So yeah, there's questions to play with there. But I agree. I think that's a solo co-op option. And I would my reaction is like put some more richness into it and actually do it and make it a defining coolness of the solo mode rather than have it be a thing that's going to inevitably make people feel janky in the versus mode. Make it like the sexy one of the sexy things that you can do in Fringe. You know what I mean? Because then you're like, oh, today, yeah, like you say, Han Solo is taking over that little, and then you can have all sorts of crap about like disguises and scanning, and all the cops will notice you if you fly through the Millennium Falcon, but not if you.
Yeah, because like one of the things that I'm imagining in the fringe is having some kind of alert level,
Mm.
like it's basically can I find the ship that's got the loot? Can I get the loot off and can I get out? And can I do all of that before the cops show up?
Yeah, like the GTA thing where you get like an increasing number of stars, and then you go
Yeah, exactly.
a
Or
respray and then come out and you're okay
yeah,
again.
or the way that like the threat level works in Perilous Tales, or the way that like this is very like Skulljacker was supposed to be like this as well.
Yeah, just sort of keeping
or,
swapping
or the
shit.
way that Space Gits kind of says, at some point the cops will show up and the party's over.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the thing that's about like looking into the richness that is going to be the fringe system, and
Yeah.
but immediately like when you like last conversation where you said okay this is what fringe is, it's like okay there's a lot of investigation to go on there, and a lot of potential interesting fun jolliness, right? Well, that's an overview, I guess, of well, not an overview, a quite detailed
A
deep
very
dive
deep dive. Yeah.
into where A Billion Suns is at the moment. As we said in the last conversation, these are sort of live development conversations that people, I think, either find incredibly fascinating or totally irrelevant, depending
Raise
on
your money, it takes your choice.
depending on their perspective. Hopefully, our very niche audiences of the first type.
God bless you all.
If you are genuinely of the second type, I think this might be the wrong place for you. Yeah, again, if you've watched this conversation as a Billion Suns fan, not a
I don't
billion,
have a billion fans, no.
a billion fan son, son of a billion fans. That's the alternative Freddy Krueger remake. If you are a fan of A Billion Suns and you've watched this, I imagine you've got some opinions on some of the things that they've said. Go down to the comment section and gently offer those opinions in a way that isn't gonna make Mike instantly cry. If you are a fan of development chats and seeing how development works live, also swing down to the comment section and tell us what you think about the process that you have here witnessed. Hit the like and subscribes while you're doing that. And check out the links section because by this point, it seems very likely there'll be a link across to the beta rules.
Yeah, you can read it yourself and you can see all the changes from
And
what we've been looking at now. It will no doubt be different.
yeah, and test it. You can test it. Please test it. That would be really handy.
And if you do test it, you can follow the link through to the A Billion Suns beta channel in my Discord, in the Plant Smasher Discord, where we will be chatting about the changes and generally kicking the space tires.
Kicking the space. Do they have tires?
They
Yeah.
did in Spaceballs.
Swing across to various discords, chat to us about this process. Check out our patrons where you can support the channel directly. Check out the links to where you can buy our things, where you can support the channel slightly less directly, but possibly get a bit more for it. Yeah, but for now, I think from this episode, this rule of carnage and this conversation, it's going to be a thank you and goodbye. So, thank you and goodbye. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.